The webinar will begin in 1 minute. Welcome, everyone. We are pleased that you have joined us for today's webinar titled Britney Spears Teaches About Conservatorships. The webinar will last approximately 20 minutes, and at the end, you will be given an opportunity to receive supporting materials by email free of charge to you. You will be told how you may email questions related to today's content to the presenter. Today's presenter will be Linus Sugis. Linus is the president of Advanced Underwriting Consultants. He and his team answer tax and technical questions posed by producers every day. Linus also spent 14 years working in the home office of a life insurance company in various roles. He also started, ran, and sold an estate planning law practice in the Nashville area. Linus will draw on his legal and life insurance experience during today's webinar, and here he is.
Thank you, Amber, and welcome everyone. I hope you weren't expecting Britney Spears to conduct today's webinar. You're stuck with me instead. But before we get into the content, let's decide what it is that we're going to talk about next month. Next month's webinar will be on November 3rd, first Wednesday of the month at 11 o'clock Central Time. And we'll open the poll in a minute, and you'll be able to choose between end-of-life planning, captive insurance companies get a win, and HSAs in a nutshell. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll and ask you to go ahead and cast your vote for one of those three. Please go ahead and do that. Go ahead and give you a second or two to complete your voting. All right, we're going to close the poll. And next month's topic will be captive insurance companies get a win. Captive insurance companies get a win. First Wednesday of the month. The next month's webinar will be on November 3rd. Thank you for participating in that. So let's get into it and let's talk about Britney Spears and what she can teach us about conservatorships. You know, in order to kind of set the stage, we'll go through a little bit of background on Britney and her conservatorship history. We'll talk about the relationship with her father and how the California courts got involved. And then finally, some lessons to share about the whole situation and how we might apply those lessons to our clients as we work with them. First of all, you know, why are we talking about conservatorships, or why are conservatorships relevant at all? Well, if you've been in the business for a while, you've probably run into circumstances where a client, perhaps an older client, becomes incapacitated and can no longer be relied on to exercise sound financial judgment. And the family ends up stepping in, and they're in a desperate situation because they believe the conservatee, the person who is the client who is impaired, the conservatee, cannot competently handle their own financial affairs. And so the question becomes, well, who will, and what authority does the person who's stepping in have? And that's not always clear, and it's not always a straightforward path to getting somebody to act on behalf of somebody else. Usually, if plans haven't been made in advance, the family has to go to court and somebody has to file a petition to ask the court to provide a substitute, somebody to act on behalf of the conservatee. And that process is structured, and it's hard because, as you might expect, courts wouldn't easily give somebody the power to act financially on behalf of somebody else. Usually it only happens when the conservatee can be proved to be, or can prove to have no capacity to act on their own behalf. And sometimes those situations aren't clear. If we've got, early stages of dementia or Alzheimer's, and the person with control of their own assets isn't willing to give them up, courts sometimes ask to rule in those circumstances and fact situations where things aren't clear. And so I think courts are reluctant, and rightly reluctant, to give somebody else the power to act on a person's behalf. And that's why conservatorships end up being kind of a difficult situation where an agent or a financial professional has to dance through some pretty thorny issues. So let's talk about Britney Spears. So Britney's born 1981. She's nearly 40 years old. Hard to believe for those of us who are older than that, but that's the deal. Her sister was born in 1991, 10 years later. Britney's also got an older brother. Britney's success starts in 1997. Her first two albums are amazingly successful. Then in 2002, Britney's parents, Jamie and Lynn, divorce. They ultimately reconcile for a while without remarrying. And so the family situation ends up being a little bit up for grabs. And then in 2004, things start to get a little bit stretched, I think, for Britney. She marries her childhood friend, Jason Alexander, in Las Vegas. The way that it played out in the press is that she got married kind of on a whim. And what happened shortly after the marriage is that the marriage was annulled 55 hours after taking place. So it's the first sign that things aren't all perfect with Britney's life. Later in 2004, Britney does get into a more stable relationship. She marries Kevin Federline. Their son, Sean, is born in 2005. Son Jaden is born in 2006. But unfortunately, in 2006, divorce proceedings with Federline begin. And that's the beginning of some of the events that kind of lead up to the conservatorship proceeding taking place in California. If you remember, in 2006, the news reported and took pictures of Britney driving with her infant son on her lap rather than in a car seat. In 2007, Britney entered and exited drug rehab within one day. She lost legal custody of her two sons to her ex-husband in 2007. And what really kind of triggered the whole thing was she refused to release physical custody of her sons to Federline's representatives when it was clear that she was required to do that. And so it appeared that she was in some trouble in 2008, and her father in 2008 files a petition in the California court asking for the court to appoint a conservator, both of the estate and of the person of Britney. That petition is approved. There is a temporary conservatorship that is granted as part of that process. And based on the news stories from the time, the conservatorship papers are not public, but based on the news stories of the time, it feels like that there was some cooperation in the conservatorship process between Britney and those seeking to be conservator early in the process. It feels like Britney was in some trouble back in 2008. So that happened. And then her father, Jamie, is named a co-conservator as part of the process. And that ends up leading to some uncertainty and some trouble as the years go by. So that's how it's sorted out. California is a little different from other places in that a conservatorship can be established not only when somebody is unable to handle their own financial affairs, but the person who is impaired can ask the court for a conservator to be named as well. So a conservatee can be part of the process. And so it's not exactly clear how the conservatorship came about and how much Britney cooperated at the beginning. We do know that she wasn't, or we do have reports that she wasn't allowed to hire her own attorney because the judge believed that she didn't have the capacity to do that at the time the conservatorship started. California statute does allow the conservatee to have some input as to who is going to be the conservator of her estate, provided the conservatee has mental capacity. And so this is what we think happened in terms of the starting and end points of Britney's conservatorship. So in 2008, as I mentioned earlier, Britney, the judge rules Britney doesn't have the capacity to hire her own lawyer. Sometime after that, the temporary conservatorship was converted to a permanent conservatorship. Again, this is the source of some of the trouble that's been described in the press recently. Her father, Jamie, at various points during this proceeding, has been conservator of Britney's estate or co-conservator of her estate and conservator of her person. He's not currently conservator of either, but he has acted in that capacity. And Britney's had a kind of a difficult relationship with her father, and over the years she's become resentful of what he's done, arguably on her behalf. The lawyers have gotten enriched as part of this, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not necessarily a good thing either. We've got 1,560 court documents as of about a month ago that were produced during the conservatorship. Britney paid for all of them, and that means that the process was semi-public and that it was expensive. And the question is, was value provided? Was the process needed under these circumstances? Those are all valid questions for which I don't have an answer. But there you go. Lawyers have gotten paid. Conservators have gotten paid. And Britney, for most of that, was working, making money, and paying for all of that was at least arguably being done on her behalf. Lynn Spears eventually joins the effort to remove Jamie, which started in earnest about a year ago. And Lynn and Jamie, even though they had reconciled for a while, apparently have become estranged again. And so she's seeking to, she's joining her daughter's effort to remove Jamie, and Jamie was in fact removed recently as conservator. Britney, a few months ago, told the court that her dad has exploited her and should be jailed for all the things that he's done. That's newspaper reports and a transcript of what Britney told the court. And then, Jamie, as I said, was removed as conservator. More drama to follow. The court proceeding will will go on for a while, and that will be expensive for Britney and give her kind of some kind of more adverse publicity. And all of those things go to underscore how difficult and expensive and uncertain a conservatorship process can be. And so, the main lesson, I think, for those of us who are working with our clients is to encourage our clients to make plans in advance to avoid the conservatorship process. And the main tool in avoiding the conservatorship process is a power of attorney. Under a power of attorney document, which is prepared by and signed by the person who is giving, this authority to somebody else, the authority to act on a person's financial affairs is extended to an agent, right? And the authority can be durable, meaning that it starts now and keeps on going no matter what happens, or it can spring into effect when something happens. The powers that the agent has can be broad or narrow. And it's not just a power of attorney that can be used to handle these kinds of circumstances. Certainly people can put together revocable trusts instead of or in conjunction with powers of attorney as a way to allow for management of their affairs through incapacity or other impairment. So the point is that you got to plan in advance. You got to plan why somebody's in good shape. You got to plan while somebody's in good shape in order to make plans for the possibility of impairment, so that you've got something in place so you don't have to go through the conservatorship process. And so we as financial professionals ought to be encouraging our clients, when we encourage them to have their estate planning documents drawn up, to have powers of attorney, perhaps revocable trusts, as part of the package, so that they can anticipate the possibility of being impaired and make things work smoothly through that situation. And it almost goes without saying, but I will say it, it must be implemented in advance before something goes wrong in order for things to be effective. So what lessons would I encourage you to take away from today's session? Well, first of all, the Britney Spears case shows how a conservatorship might work for better or worse. If your clients are resisting making plans for the possibility of impairment, I think using the Britney Spears case as an example of how things might or might not work out if somebody has to go to court to ask for permission to act on their behalf. I think that case underscores the importance of making plans in advance. And I think there's some value in using the headlines to help your clients do the right thing. Powers of attorney and trusts can be used as tools to anticipate the possibility. And one ancillary benefit of encouraging our clients to do this kind of planning in advance, it helps advisors sidestep potential thorny family issues. If you're working with a client and the client is starting to become impaired and family wants to step in to help, but family's views on how things ought to be handled aren't consistent between them, we've certainly gotten calls where the advisor, the financial advisor, is being pushed in the middle, and the advisor has to figure out, how to manage through those issues. And if there's a power of attorney or revocable trust in place in advance, it helps sidestep at least some of those issues by identifying who's in charge under those circumstances. So helping clients plan in advance not only helps the client and the client's family, but also helps the advisor sidestep some of those emotional issues when family gets involved. So I'd like to thank you for joining today's webinar. I hope you found the information to be helpful to you. And at this point, I will turn the microphone back over to Amber, who will close us out. Amber?
Thank you for joining us today. As a reminder, if you would like to receive supporting materials, feel welcome to email us at asktheexpert@advancedunderwriting.com. You may also email questions related to today's webinar. Feel welcome to join us for the next webinar on the first Wednesday of next month, which is November the 3rd at this same time. Next month's webinar will be titled Captive Insurance Companies Get a Win. You can also find an archive of past webinars on our YouTube channel, Advanced Underwriting Consultants. Please subscribe to our channel. It helps us to keep making free webinar content. Today's presentation will be posted on our YouTube channel by the end of this week. Finally, for more information about the services that Advanced Underwriting Consultants offer, including phone consultation and newsletter licensing, feel welcome to contact us at 615-224-1291. That's 615-224-1291. Thanks again and best wishes for continued success.